I will not comment due to time constraints. I'd like to leave the space for members of the parliament. So please hand over the mic, and please translators be alert. And if you're not, I can translate. I like the jokes invested in the presentations. I laughed. But is the government serious that the members of the parliament should be aware enough to practice their constitutional rights as per Article 101? Yes, we can study English, it's okay, but sometimes you send us technical codes or encrypted information. Do you think we might be able to understand that? We're not that technically very well educated. So I want to address Mr. Javed. If we say that the IMF vision, which is the main if we accept that the IMF vision, which is the basis for the government reform program on budgeting, among other things, if this vision is successful in many countries, I'm not sure if Egypt can be among these countries or not, but is it objective and accurate from a scientific point of view to consider it the only vision? The only vision for countries that want to reform its economic system? Is it like a binding? And maybe if we look to different experiences, countries had their own experiences and they did not follow the recipes of certain institutions. On the contrary, there were crucial disagreements. And the second point to Mr. Kojuk, comparing the numbers in the budget and the closing account or end-year report shows discrepancies. The government is not committed to what is enshrined in the constitution. They do not go back to the parliament and they impose certain measures as if they are de facto. How can we ensure that this will not be repeated in the coming years' budgeting process? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm very happy and pleased to be here among you today. I would like to warmly welcome the guests. I have 3 points in brief. The 2 points for IMF personnel. I will be honest, I have a negative perception of IMF, and it's not about AIDS, it's about imposing certain conditions. It's one recipe or one solution fit all countries, as if this is the situation, and we know that there are certain countries that suffer the same. But the conditions can be divided into 2 parts, harsh or bad conditions, and the government is committed 100% to following these harsh conditions, and other good conditions to which the government is not committed. So, I always look to IMF as if they are an investor or a donor. Whenever the report shows that there are defaults or that the country did not commit to everything, but you still disperse the loan or help the country, why so? And what about comparing Egypt's situation before the IMF loan? Is it any better? The flotation or the Egyptian pound devaluation or lifting electricity and fuel subsidies. Can we compare? Now, I'd like to move on to transparency. I'm sorry, Mr. Ahmed, it's only in the form and not in the substance. What you remember the comprehensive health insurance law? The government sent us 6,000 papers in English, and you need to be an expert to read and understand that. And when we voted on the law, they show us a very summarized version and asked us to read it quickly to vote now. This is not transparency. Any law submitted by the government does not include cost and benefit analysis. Even if we want to fund any program, we do not know the revenues of the fund, the subscribers, the deficit, the surplus. We do not know. You can only approve or decline. You only say yes or no. You vote or you abstain. That's it. Even if you want to do it for reflection, you cannot do so. So you're not helping those interested to discuss things. I had a look on the Citizens Guide. I'm sorry to say, there are misleading, inaccurate data. If you tell me that you spend 10% of the budget on health, and this is the highest percentage because it's 115 million or billion, yes. And you're presenting this as if it's a historic achievement. I'm sorry, okay, I will not say misleading, sorry for using that, I'll say unclear or impartial. Thank you so much. I'm a member of the budgeting committee and I'd like to thank all the speakers here. I want to comment on the budget. The government is making progress on data availability, but we still face major challenges in this regard. Let me start with the percentages enshrined in the Constitution when it comes to spending on health, education, whether pre-university or university education. The government circumvents these percentages, and it's clear, and it has its own ramifications. Also, what I find a bit strange is that the government should send us the budget 3 months before the approval date. But this is not the case at all. They give us a very short time, and it's also a part of our fault. So sometimes we find trucks loading tons of papers to 25 committees to decide on that in a very short time. So we do not organize wide discussions. Also, when it comes to guarantees and debts, this is not clear in the 5th volume we receive from the government. It's always very confusing to us. What made matters worse, after the devaluation of the Egyptian pound, the government said that they will pay the foreign debts based on different exchange rate. So as if you killed the budget. It's very, very confusing. And since the devaluation happened after the start of the fiscal year, this is not reflected in the budget. Also, there is great imbalances in the wage scheme of the country. So 70% of the scheme is allocated to 16 entities. What about the subsidy calculation? It's not clear, especially to fuel or petroleum products. We receive certain errors that are clearly evident in the budget, but we do not have enough time to reconsider that. But it's time to reconsider that. On the other hand, on the revenues chapter, we have taxes and grants and other revenues, usually coming from economic bodies like the General Authority for Petroleum, the Suez Canal Authority, the new urban communities, and there are overlapping aspects. I'm not here just to be harsh in criticizing the government, but my point is I want to have an idea about the other countries' experience. As members of the parliament, we do not care enough for the budget or the closing account, and the government felt that, and they gave themselves much freedom in these matters. So I want to emphasize that since we become members of the parliament in 2016, things improved. I have to say so. I'd like to warmly welcome the guests. Thank you so much for your time. Ihab Mansour, member of the Housing Committee in the Egyptian Parliament. Very briefly, we have a problem when it comes to issuance of the data in a timely manner. The data I have here is for the fiscal year 2016-2017, and we are about to start 2019. We need to have a mechanism to improve the issuance of data in a timely manner. Also, the program funding are sent to us, but sometimes they are misleading, or they are based on assumptions. So the program we received come, and since the resources are limited, I do not have enough data to review this. I only have the gross or the total. Nothing is clear to me to approve or disapprove. Also, the percentages allocated to scientific research, health, and education, there is a problem in calculating these percentages. And it's persisting. Also, we want these percentages to be in line with the international percentages. So I want to have a clear vision of what the government is doing in order to catch up with the international percentages for these sectors allocations, because when people in the street ask me, I have no idea. I'm very happy that you are submitting these citizens' guide, but I want to know the score on the availability, because I don't know what is available. So what about laymen? So when you told me that we scored 33%, I'm not sure what is the basis for calculating this score. 90% of the people are not even aware of the availability. So how do you calculate or how do you assign scores? Thank you so much, Dr. Abla, for organizing this seminar. I have a few questions, if you may. I would like to join my colleagues in saying that in the performance and program budget, there are numbers that we cannot understand. So, for example, when it comes to education and higher education and educational universities were added to public hospitals in order to increase the number. And I'm sorry, this is misleading. And we need to discuss this further. We should be transparent in explaining the different categories, and we should not mix things when it comes to explaining the numbers. Also, there is another problem. When you send things to the government rates, many challenges arises because these local governments are not empowered enough to say that they dispersed or they spend this money on certain things. It's all about paperwork. They can have this money under awards or wages or remunerations, and the least is given to the community. We are wasting the public funds. Where are the government reports on this regard? We still have a back door or a back stage known as special funds. What are the indicators to calculate the sources and revenues of these special funds? And what do we spend the money? This is backstage things. This is the kitchen where we do not get to go. We need a law on transparency, but it's not moving forward. It's not listed on any meeting's agenda, and here I have a big question mark. Also, there are many companies incurred losses that get subsidies. So why am I burdening the budget with these extra support for the companies that are not making money?
طبعا في النهاية في حاجة المفروض تطلع اسمها الآثار الإصلاحية وآثار
Also, we need to know the impact of reform on citizens. Maybe you can go to ask the citizens in the street and ask them to what extent are they satisfied with the reforms.
في حالة من الرفض العام بأنه لا يتحمل.
Or are we going to bear all the suffering in order to make these reforms a reality? No. People will not be able to bear. We need to take into consideration citizen satisfaction while designing these reform measures. Thank you so much, Dr. Abla, and I'd like to warmly welcome the guests. I am a member of the budgeting committee and a rapporteur of the subcommittee for following up on 2030 vision, and also following up on performance and budgeting committee, to which my colleagues refer to. I have a few comments to make. I join my colleagues in saying that whatever was submitted in the performance budget is not up to the standards, because we are in the transition phase. We have been doing so for 2 or almost 3 years. We want all the bodies to submit to the parliament all the budgets and the financial statements. But the good news is that we are about to finish working with 22 ministers, and since we started 2 years ago, we focused on implementing this for the 6 ministers, and we received the 4 quarters, and that was part of the recommendations made by Dr. Zafir, that we should have a periodical evaluation for the budget. So we already did so, and yesterday we had a meeting to review the first quarter of the 6 ministers, and we should get this done in 2 weeks. But of course, the budget should capture the impact, or should have KPIs and we need to measure the impact of all these measures on the citizens. We should not change things on paper. We want real changes on ground. We want people to feel that, and we should rationalize or optimize the use of our resources. This is the main objective. I have a question to Mr. Ahmed. Was was all these matters taken into consideration in this transparency report? And we sent you these questions through Mr. Sobki, and we are waiting for a response. Also, when it comes to the parliament oversight or the role of the parliament in holding the government accountable, this is already done. This is already in place effectively. We have lengthy reports to review. Yes, maybe we need to simplify the reports, but it's already there. We have a very promising start to build on. As for having an overall picture of the public financial management, we are working on this in our committee. We addressed the ministers to send us everything, so all the ministries submit whether budgetary or extra budgetary activities and the KPIs. We are working really hard on that. And we agreed on that with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Planning. We should get all these data. As members of the Parliament, we should have a clear picture of what is going on and our current situation and the desired destination. And we are not up to the expectations. We are just starting. As for all the fiscal data for the coming year, when it comes to reports, all the ministries should submit performance budgeting, at least from a quantitative point of view. And for the very first time, we will take into consideration joint ventures. So we will take a vertical and horizontal approach, especially when it comes to local development and educational sectors. We want to get the ministry plan and then go all the way down to the local directorates or departments. We will also follow up on the coordination among the ministries, so it's not the case that the Ministry of Finance set the plan and that's it. No, we need to follow up on the implementation of the plan based on the geographical distribution in order to be able to follow up on that every 3 months. I was really pleased that Dr. Safir discussed the pre-budget discussion, and this is enlisted in the agenda, because sometimes we realize that we need to change the spending schemes. But when we arrive the budget, it's too late to restructure things or leave things out or go for any drastic changes. So we have this item on our agenda. We need these pre-budget document, or we need to organize discussions between the members of the Parliament and the Ministry of Finance before getting the budget, because what we want to do is we want our country to be better, and we want to optimize resources use. Thank you so much.
First of all, thanks to the panel. And my question is to Mr. Zaviram and to Dr. Bakir. First of all, the presentation that you made is very promising, and obviously we have a long way to go to achieve it or come close to it. But I optimist and believe that we can have a better future. And I think we should start by building the infrastructure that will allow us to produce these type of reports. And starting, I think we need to develop the human resources that is capable of producing these reports, and not just have them at the Ministry of Finance, but have them at all the ministries, the other ministries that feed the Ministry of Finance with information to produce the budget and the projected GDP growth, and be able to allocate resources and extract the best return for the country, whether in terms of financial return or employment or security, whatever the criteria that we all agree with. So the question is, how can the IMF help in this? And Egypt is abundant with young, promising graduates in economics and econometrics and financial economic statistics. And I believe these type of people have to be spread all across governments, ministries, local governments. Because I believe that the quality of the output depends a great deal on the quality of the information we feed. It's not just a matter of filling tables at a certain ministry about money spent and so on. I think it has to be qualitatively high that we can depend on to make a rational, logical decision. Thank you.
Maha Mustafa. I teach economics in the AUC. I would like to thank Dr. Adla for this invite. I have 3 points. And a last question to Dr. Ahmed. In my humble point of view, citizens have the priority in terms of the budget transparency, with due respect, and since this is a highly transparent session for the credit agencies and the IMF, of course, but I have some misgivings towards them when they issued reports right before the Arab Spring, and the credit agency also that provided high credits before the financial crisis hit hard. So my point of view is that Egyptian citizens have the priority. And secondly, I personally know Sarah Eid, and I know how enthused she is, and it seems that you had a division of labor. That's how the quality of the work came to light. But you should also think about delivering good products to citizens. I can be able to make the best product, but fail to deliver it sufficiently, and this is how people would not know about the citizen participation or public participation. And so, after we do all this, is there going to be real accountability that leads to change, or is it just box that should be ticked? Because people are upset that they are spending taxes, and these taxes go to people who keep on giving birth to babies, and these are wasted resources, or the tax, the amounts of tax that to go to the public servants who do not even do their job or serve me right. So what is the result of having this transparently, if ever? Ahmed Dawood. My questions are basically directed to Dr. Ahmed. For the citizen participation,
مش
budget.
هنلاقي مثلا ان انا اقول للمواطن ان الدعم ارتفع من 35 مليار جنيه ل 110 مليار جنيه
For
بعد
example,
التعويم،
for
رغم كل
the
تخفيض
subsidy
الدعم
that
مفيش مشاكل. مش
rose
هنلاقي أنا بقول له
from
مثلا إن
35
مرتفعات الفوائد 7
to over 60, and people cannot feel it. You'll find that the government did so and so. But the progress that took place in the transparency was started in 2013. It was first issued encrypted. Before that, it was issued encrypted. But now it's better. As for the Excel sheet, it's not available for all across the documents. It's only for the monthly report, and not for all the not for all the quarters. Within the budget, there is no improvement for the terminology used. For example, in order to be able to access the privatization or the returns that comes from the sale of the state assets, it is put under strange titles. So I hope that within the annotations or the footnotes, you would mention what exactly this falls under. The local government within the budget receives 5%. And spending on power and sanitary services are not distributed evenly. For example, in Bula district, it receives some of these allocation, but within the 5%, there are no criteria for distribution that falls back on the negotiations of the governor. There are no criteria for this division or this distribution of these services across the governance. The gap between the reality and what's on the paper. The government gives instructions that the amount of money should be collected, and what are the criteria for having the deliverables. And also the accuracy of the forecast. The budget was developed when the price of the oil barrel at $5-point-something. But when the budget was issued, the price changed. The year-end report is not issued, although it is given by the government to CAPMAS. But since it is made available by the CAPMAS, why doesn't the government do so? Spending on health includes sanitation and water in order to increase the figure, and this is not logical at all.